This is the FLUX Beambox II 55W CO2 laser. Now I do realize this video is going to be one of my longest videos to date, and for good reason. There's going to be a little bit of a setup procedure for this machine to get you operational. And literally almost half of this video is going to be about that. I believe that there should be care and attention to detail when creating a review, and not just sit next to a machine, talk for 10 minutes and show a project and say, there you go, and then push their affiliate link. And frankly, to me, I call that low effort content. I believe that there are very important steps that should not be left out when doing a review, especially when there are important setup procedures that need to be done. Now, I do get it that there's some of us, including myself, that have low attention spans for certain content. That's why in this video there will be chapters for you to skip along to wherever you need, and that way you can refer to those chapters later if you so choose. FLUX is also offering some great introductory prices and as well as giveaways. Those will be down in the description below. Now, this machine did arrive a little bit late due to some logistics problems, and I've had about 2 weeks to work with it. So let's go on and get to this review. As I've mentioned, this is the FLUX Beambox II 55W CO2 laser. This is a certified FDA Class 1 enclosed laser. It has a max speed of 900 millimeters per second, 1000 dpi high resolution, has a large working area of 23.62 inches by 14.76 inches, can cut up to 20 millimeters of acrylic and 18 millimeters of cypress, has built-in HD camera and autofocus, has high-speed camera preview and red light preview, and it's compatible with Beam Studio and Lightburn. And it also has built-in air assist. On the back, we're going to remove this plastic cover. You're going to want to keep this ring here so we could use it for the exhaust hose. On the right hand side, you have your emergency stop, 3 USB and your USB to connect to your computer. And since we're here, we're going to install the Wi-Fi antenna. It could go into any one of these ports, and it's just that simple. And on the top of the unit, you have your power button, your touchscreen interface, and you just open up the lid, and when you open the lid, it will pause your job, and then once you close it, it will resume once you resume it. And there's these 2 buttons right here that lets you know when the lid is open. On the back, you have your main power, of course your power input, and your air assist inlet, and your exhaust. Now, the Beambox 2 comes with an accessory kit. This is 2 layers, so let's start by removing the first foam top here. You get this piece of wood that you could do some testing with. This looks to be about maybe 5 millimeters thick. You get this pretty thick instruction manual. You have a quick started guide. And of course, you get a nice little thank you card. Read it if you so choose. And they do test the machine. This is the product test report, that it's passed all their QA processes, and you actually get this engraved piece of wood that actually is from that machine, your machine. I find this really odd. You have 4 placeholders here for Allen keys. And I already removed the Wi-Fi antenna. You get this roll of double-sided tape, and you get some lubrication oil. Keep your mind clean, people. Don't be dirty. Then we remove this layer, and then we have our exhaust hose. We have a USB to connect your computer power and a funnel. Please be sure that you're in a well-ventilated area. Now, the Beambox 2 comes with this really thick manual. Unfortunately, that's the only reason why it's thick is because it has 19 languages in it. Yeah, and you only have about, I don't know, 10 pages per. So it's relatively light on the instructions. But basically it says, team lift, and walks you through everything on the display. So we're going to give that a try right now. See what the display gives me for setup. So hello, you can choose English. Next. Safety, please read this carefully. Do not leave the machine unattended. Always have an accessible, functional fire extinguisher in the workspace. Sounds good to me. We got safety precautions. Do not stare at the flame generated by the laser. Regularly clean the debris inside the machine. Do not modify the machine without FLUX authorization. And now we're going to go through a startup test. It's going to fill the tank. Oh, so I have to fill this with distilled water. Okay. So I have to remove the screw for the water tank. All right. Okay, we're going to have to do that next. Now, right in here, there is a very small Phillips screw that you're going to need to take out. Okay, so we removed the screw for the lid. And it says to use a small wrench, but I believe that's a flathead screwdriver. And we're going to use a small flathead screwdriver to remove the plug in the back. Let's go back to the back and open the door. And in this door is your laser tube and the plumbing. Now, it says to use distilled water. However, if you are in a very cold environment, like I'm in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, and if I was to use distilled water, there could be a chance that these lines would freeze and actually break this tube. So what I'm going to use is marine grade antifreeze. Now this is perfectly safe for CO2 lasers. I'm going to fill it up with this instead. And that will protect any of this tubing from freezing or cracking the actual laser tube itself. So let's go ahead and fill that up right now. And here's your fill up area right here. You're going to just unscrew this. Take this cap off. And then we're going to use the provided funnel to fill it. This funnel is in the accessory box. And it doesn't really give you much room to play with, so be careful when filling. Before we start pouring, you want to make sure you hit next. And this is going to cycle the pump, and so you don't spill. So you're going to just gradually fill this. I notice that there's some water in here, and this should be okay. It says you don't need to dilute this with water, but this is only precautionary for me. Now I know it's pretty difficult to see that water/coolant tank, but we want it to be around 80% full, and that looks about right. And we can actually see the antifreeze circulating within the tubes and the CO2 tube. Now again, this already had some distilled water in there, and basically I only diluted it a little bit. I mean, this antifreeze could go down to negative 75 degrees and still work. This garage doesn't see that. We typically will see maybe 30 degrees, so that should not harm it whatsoever. So again, if you're in a cold environment, I would suggest using RV marine antifreeze in your CO2 laser. Now let's go ahead and put that screw back on and get this closed up. And before we put it on there, you want to make sure that that O-ring is still on your little cap here. And we'll put that screw in later. Okay, we're filled, so let's hit next. And we already screwed that back on. And we'll put that screw back in a little bit later. And yes, we are done. Water tank has been filled and water cooling system is functioning properly. And now we're going to do the homing test. And let's hit start. There's nothing in here. I already cleared out everything. That's what's telling me to do. Now it wants me to do an optical path test to make sure the mirrors are still aligned during shipment. Okay, so it had me put a piece of this double-sided tape on the nozzle. You can see it right there on the nozzle in the upper left. And then it's going to ask me to fire the laser. So we're going to hit post it here. Close the door, cover. So it tells you on here that the blue check mark is good because it's in the center, and if it's outside of there, it's not. But if we look at here, you can see it is very close. Man, it is center. You can see where the double-sided tape is for the nozzle. Looks like we're good to go. So let's hit burn mark exists. So we're going to be doing this again. Open the door cover, repeat step 2, take out the double-sided tape from the accessory kit, stick it on the laser head outlet, and press it gently until a circle of indentation appears on the adhesive surface. All right, so we did it again. Let's go ahead and close the lid. And we're going to hit posted. Another optical test here. Now it's bringing it to the other side, and it's going to fire again to make sure the mirrors are aligned. And now we're going to check it again. Looks good to me. And that looks good, so let's go hit complete for this. And then we're going to connect to a Wi-Fi. And that is it. Now we're all connected. And I have to say, this touchscreen feels like a tablet. It is very, very nice to work on. So we have control. Have all your jogging up here, and then your pump, everything. So let's go back. Network, machine, hardware settings. And let's do the update to the latest firmware. And while we're waiting to update to the newest firmware, I'd like to introduce today's video sponsor, PCBWay. Are you looking for a PCB manufacturer? Are you looking for rigid, flexible PCBs? Are you looking for them to assemble them for you? Well, they can. And they also offer other services, such as 3D printing, injection molding, and CNC. Heck, they even have a community section where you could buy a project and assemble it on your own. If you're looking for any of these services, please reach out to PCBWay. Next, we're going to line the camera, and we are going to use the A4 paper and double-sided tape that was provided. Okay, right now we're going to do the autofocus. Hit AF. And it's going to tell us that we need to press down the focus probe. Now we already jogged the gantry to where we want to focus, and this is the focus probe. Lower it. And we're going to hit focus, but I'm going to do that off camera so you can see what the probe does. All right, now I'm going to hit focus. And that's it. We are now focused. But you're going to want to move this up and back into the park position. So anytime that you are going to focus your materials, that's what you're going to need to do. And that's it. Pretty easy. We're going to be using the Beambox software for everything in this whole video. Now we're going to calibrate the camera, and this is going to put a series of 8 dots on the A4 paper. And then once it's done engraving those dots on there, you're going to need to move these red dots right over those, and this will align the whole camera system. But you have to make sure that you place these dots in order. And these dots can be pretty hard to see. Now I did make a mistake at the beginning here when I tried to line the dots. I thought it was going to be in the order of engraving, which it is not. So I thought that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 0 through 7 actually. But no, there's actually an order to this. So it isn't on the order of engraving. So point taken is 0 is in the upper left, and in the lower right, it's number 3. And these circles are going to be everywhere. So you're going to have to check your whole workspace to find these circles. And when you actually find the circle, it's going to tell you which number it is. And then you're going to want to center those circles on the engraving area. And then once you are done, you're just going to hit next, and that's basically it.
Now say that you're going to want to have a thicker piece of material and your gantry is pretty far up. You're going to want to lower it through here. Go ahead and slide your material underneath. And we're going to do the autofocus again. We're going to lower it. Hit focus. And of course, don't forget to raise it.
Now with any material, you're going to want to do a material test generator to see what shades you want to do and like maybe the cutting abilities. And I do this for every material I have. So I'm going to just actually resize this pretty small, drag it down in the lower left here, and we are going to do this test grid and send it to the laser. Frankly, that's one of the biggest questions I always get is, what settings do you use? Well, if you do test grids, you can actually get the benchmarks that you need and add those settings to your materials library to get you going. Of course, there will be slight variances with different woods and metals, but at least now you have a benchmark to start with.
Yep, my power and speed were too low, so it didn't show up on here. But definitely see how nice and engraved this piece of pine is. And all this soot can be easily cleaned off with some sandpaper. But I suggest always doing a material test for every piece of material that you have. Now wood, you're definitely always going to have a grain issue. So you can see how the grain is definitely inconsistent because it's wood, but you're always going to be battling the grain. So if you want to get it dark, looks like I'm going to be kind of maybe engraving right around here. It's got a nice darker tint to it. So I'm going to do another materials test, make sure that I have all my power in place. I don't think I need to run it as hot as 70%. So I'm going to most likely bring it down to 60 or below with my next material test and see how that looks. So let's give that a try.
This is why I also like to do smaller samplings of my engraving tests, because this way I could actually utilize one piece of material and get lots of different tests on there. I see a lot of people when they do material tests that they actually use the whole piece. It's not necessary. Do it small, and that way you could just see the results and do multiple tests if you so choose. Well, my power and speed are a little hot, but I can still make out actually the parameters for my material test. And again, you can still see that I'm battling the grain here. It's always going to be that way unless you're doing something with MDF. And I think I'm going to go somewhere right around here for my image that I'm going to do. I definitely don't want it that dark, and you can see how deep it went through. So, but again, material tests are definitely a need.
Actually, I just noticed something. I was like, wow, this is pretty darn deep. And then I was like, this is really deep. It went all the way through. Holy cow. Now that is some serious power. Wow. Okay. Let's go ahead and engrave this side. Wow.
And once again, we are using Beambox software, and I'm going to do a power of 40 and a speed of 400. I think that will get the results that I want. And for this, I'm going for more of a deeper engraving than a char, because this way, if I so choose, I could actually fill in the engraving with maybe some resin. I actually did a project before where I filled in the engraving with resin, and it turned out really nice. I'll put it in the description down below. Let's go ahead and get a closer look at this. This again is a plaque, it's not a cutting board. Let's get a nice focus on here. There we go. And you can see here we are battling the grain, as I mentioned. So you are going to get inconsistencies with your engraving or your burn. As you can see, this grain is going through all the letters. And actually the knot came out pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. So again, you will have inconsistencies. If you're doing something with MDF, it definitely will be a lot more consistent. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with it. And if you want deeper engraving, again, you could actually fill it with some colored resin, and that will come out nice and sharp. Now, let's go to something else. Well, slate coasters are pretty darn popular, and I did grab the image, and I'm centering the biohazard on the slate coaster. And you gotta watch out for the jagged edges. They're not showing up that great here, but I'm doing a power of 25 and a speed of 350. I found that to be pretty good setting for CO2 lasers. And this took only about a minute and a half to engrave. And you can see that we're getting a nice contrast here. It's a nice light gray over the surface of this slate coaster. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this slate coaster. I can already tell it looks pretty darn centered, and it's got some nice contrast. Let's go ahead and just clean this real quick. Okay, it's cleaned up. Look at that. Nice contrast to it. Very well centered. I really couldn't see the edges all that well because we do have the honeycomb background that's dark as well as this. If you want the camera to pick it up better, you could just lay some copy paper on there as for white, and it'll pick it up a lot easier. But yeah, it came out really nice. And what's going to be inconsistent with doing slate coasters is the chipping around the edges. But for literally doing this the first try, this came out great. Let's see about doing a couple batches. So I just used some plain white copy paper so that way the camera could pick up slate coasters a lot easier. And we're going to try the auto fit, auto arrange function on the Beambox software. We're going to go into the Beambox software in the upper right, click on those sliders, and we're going to click auto fit. And it's going to bring you to this, and we're going to see our slate coasters. And then we're going to just click on next. And this screen is to adjust the position of the artwork. Since we already have it basically how we want it, we could just go ahead and hit apply. And you're going to see it just magically put all these biohazards in place. Are some of them perfect? No, but this is where we could go ahead and go into each one and just see how centered and if it's where we want them. And again, you can see that we got the chip edges here, and here in the upper left, we can see that that one should be tilted a little bit more to the left. So we're going to adjust this one real quick. We can sort of see the chipped edges a little bit better now, and that looks, yeah, that looks good right there. So now let's go to the next one, and we can zoom in and actually see the chipped edges a little bit better. And that looks okay. And this one looks like we need to tilt it a little bit more. So it does a pretty good job of just putting them in place. And again, using the copy paper against any type of dark objects will definitely enhance the camera's ability to see the material. So this may not have been the best product to test with, to engrave with the auto fit feature, but this is some of the challenges that you will face with doing these rock coasters, just again because of the chipped edges. Otherwise, I believe it did a pretty darn good job with centering most of them. And you can see down here the H is a little bit on the chipped part, and I'm going to just go ahead and move it up a little bit, and I'm going to just try to center it as best as I can. I should have actually resized this, but I didn't. And that one looks really good. So we are done with this. So let's go ahead and send it and engrave it. And of course, the ideal solution would be to create a jig where I would take like a piece of wood and just cut out where these coasters would go. And that way I could just run batch after batch after batch. But if you're just doing a one-off, this is a great solution to have. Okay, let's go ahead and open this up and take a look to see how well it did. And I did have some, user intervention with these, but overall, I think they turned out really, really good. I was able to center them, and you do have some inconsistencies with your engraving / burn because this is a natural product, but overall, they all look very, very similar, and I did a great job. The copy paper did help with seeing each of the coasters individually. I was able to zoom in and adjust each image versus just trying to drag and place each of them. It did save some time. And again, this most likely wasn't the best scenario to test with because of each edge being different, but overall, I'm very happy with the results of the engravings. And I think it's time to move on to something else after this. Let's go ahead and try cutting. Now this is approximately 5.4 millimeters. I think it's Basswood. I don't know. I picked this up at a light burn event when a guy was selling a whole bunch of these, So they've been in the garage under some weight to try to keep them as nice and flat as possible. So there's almost no rocking to it. So let's go ahead and give this a try. Since Easter is around the corner, I decided to hop onto Etsy and hop onto Etsy and see if there's a file that we can test with to cut out on this sheet of basswood. And I'm definitely resizing it because I want to be able to use this piece of wood for other projects as well. And by resizing it to a smaller size, we can actually see the accuracy of how this cuts. There's going to be some real intricate cuts here, so we're going to do a power of 55 and a speed of 10. And I think that should actually do it. Now, I do want to mention that this does have an integrated air assist. There's an actual add-on port on the back in case if you want to have something a little bit more powerful than what's already embedded in the machine. So yes, you can have an auxiliary air assist, but the unit does have its own built-in. That is just an extra port to use if you so choose to have your own air assist. Just want to clarify. All right, about 27 minutes later. I don't know if I want to remove this. It seems like most of these have pushed through. I don't know. I guess I should remove it. That looks good. So let's go ahead. What? Well, what was I worried about? Let's zoom out a little bit. Well, that was clean. So how about the backside? Wow, that built-in air assist works great. Look at that. Super clean. Let's go ahead and take out. Okay. That worked very well. Look at that. Absolutely amazing. Look how small this piece is. Let's go ahead and take out another one. very delicate. This should be about twice the size. Amazing. And here is the last one. All right, let's get these lined up here. And there you go. That is so beautiful. I'm not into the crafty stuff, but you paint this different colors. Look how clean the burns are. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So I want to talk about using the rotary and a little bit of a problem I have at the same time, and how using the rotary may solve my problem. Currently I have a workbench that's 24 inches wide, and you notice that the Beambox II doesn't really fit on there. It's resting on its belly, and the 2 feet here just don't make it, and that's because this workbench is 24 inches and the span for the feet is about 25.5 inches. So I'm short like 1.5 inches. Yeah, keep your comments to yourself there, people. Laugh all you want. I'm short 1.5 inches. But with using the rotary, the machine actually has to be lifted up. So I think this is also going to solve my problem by using the Beambox extension. And let me show you what I need to do also on the inside of the machine. Inside the machine, you'll notice it has this access panel. That panel will be removed, and there's going to be a cavity where the rotary is going to sit. Let me show you what it looks like on the box. So this is the extension pocket. You notice that it has these risers for where the feet are, and actually there's a hole here where each of these rubber feet will go into. So this is going to raise the machine up, so that way we could also use the rotary. So this should actually solve my problem where I just will be able to get this machine off of its belly. So let's go ahead and get this put together and show you the results. Well, that was actually really easy. It took all of about 5 minutes. All you have to do is lift up the sides, slide it underneath. It aligns with the feet. There's no screws or anything. And it is raised up, and may even have a little bit of storage here. And you can see the box in the center. That's where the rotary is. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And here it is. Again, you can remove that access panel that I mentioned earlier. It's held together with, or in place with 6 screws. You can remove those 6 screws and reuse them for this tub. And this grid you see here is right underneath your honeycomb. Your honeycomb is just held in place with magnets, so you just lift that straight up. Then you have these hangers, and these hangers are held in place with these thumb screws that you could just tighten down, and it helps it from shifting around. And then simply all you do is you take your rotary and you just place it right inside, just like that. That way it is down further in the cavity here. And I like this because you actually then get some height to play with. And other manufacturers, they just leave this whole bottom exposed, and then you're exposed to the laser light. It's just not a good idea. I really think this is a great solution for doing taller objects, and you definitely get a lot more versatility. And of course, it has its own dedicated rotary port here. It just goes back here into the back. So let's go ahead and give this a test. Now the rotary is completely adjustable for pivoting, and you get this magnetic level. And you want to make sure that your, whatever it is, your mug or your tumbler is completely level before we do the autofocus. If your mug or tumbler is not level, you have inconsistencies with your burn or your etching or whatever it is that you're doing from one end to another. So now we're going to just go ahead and do our autofocus and make sure that we are all set and done before we engrave our tumbler. And of course, after it's done focusing, we're going to raise this up, and now we're done and ready to engrave. Now I did this tumbler at 40% power at 250 millimeters per second at 1000 dpi because I definitely wanted to have as much detail as possible, but also trying to keep my engraving times down to a minimum. And of course you're going to want to test and see if these settings may work for you, but it worked for me. And how long did this tumbler take to engrave? Well, only 5 minutes and 44 seconds. Definitely not too bad. But it looks a little dirty and doesn't look like it may have engraved all that powder coating off. So let's take a closer look. It looks like it's just some soot. So what I'm going to do is actually take it to the sink and use a magic eraser on it, and this is the results. Definitely worked, and it's really nice and crisp and clean. You're going to see some reflections here, but yeah, let's cook. It definitely did a great job engraving this this tumbler, and you could, I mean, I'm just thoroughly impressed with it. Everything is nice and centered. Did a really good job. That's from the paper towel up there for drying it, but overall very happy with how the rotary works. Okay, let's go over some of the positive and negatives about this Beambox 2. I really like that it is all-in-one, meaning that it has its built-in air assist and it has its own water cooling system to protect the laser from getting overheated. I really like that it has autofocus. That way you don't have to worry about manually moving the Z up and down, and it just does it for you. And since the Z moves up and down, that means the camera actually is functional with deeper parts. Because in other machines, that if the camera is stationary and the bed doesn't move up and down, that means that as your object gets closer or farther away from the camera, it's less accurate. And the touchscreen is very informative. Not only is it very responsive, but it tells you the progress of the job, which is really nice to have. And let's go over some of the negatives. The machine is rather big, really big. It arrives on a pallet, and chances are that pallet might just be dropped off at the bottom of your driveway. So you're going to need to be prepared to do a team lift operation. You're also expected to save the boxes, just in case if you cannot get the issue resolved by online help or over the phone. I would like to see documentation greatly improved. I mean, right here, it's a really thick and guide, and I thought it was going to have a lot of information, but it's only 10 pages long. Sure, the display did walk me through everything on the setup, and it was actually really nice to see that. However, you know, with lasers, it feels like almost with every manufacturer that you're kind of left on an island. I would like to see a manufacturer just go ahead and do a project from start to finish. That way, people could get a better understanding on how to use these machines. The work area is lit up by LED strips. However, I think it's a little bit inadequate. I think the camera could benefit from its own individual light source to help illuminate any of the materials that you are working on. Overall, I've been very satisfied with the performance of this machine. As my reviews go, I just expect products to work out of the box, and this one did. It actually exceeded some of my expectations, especially with cutting material. The cuts were some of the cleanest I've ever seen out of almost any laser engraver that I've actually tested. So if you are looking to purchase this machine, I would suggest checking out other content creators as well. See what they think of it. And if you are looking to purchase, please use my affiliate link. It does not cost you any additional money. And I, once again, thank you for tuning in to Tripod's Garage. Please have a wonderful day, evening, or weekend, or whenever you decide to watch this video. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you again on Tripod's Garage.